Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Blue Frontier. James here, joined by Shan. We are live and in person in beautiful downtown San Diego. It is Sunday afternoon, early on, and we have just wrapped up our weekend at Toffee Fest. It was an amazing weekend, and we're going to do something a little bit different on this episode that we might do for a normal post-match, which is to kind of walk through the events of the weekend. We'll talk about the game a little bit. We're not going to do a normal post-match like we have done in the past, just because I think, speaking for both of us, very different experience watching the match in a pub full of dedicated Toffees. You don't quite get the level of attention to the match that I think we would need to have in order to do the normal post-match that we put forth on this show. But Shan, I guess we're wrapping up the weekend here. Give your thoughts on the experience as a whole before we walk through it.
Yeah, first, really excited that you got to experience California for the first time, James. I know we had a really fun day on Friday, just kind of walking around the city, really enjoying some nice weather, especially where both of our climates are pretty cold. So I think seeing the sun, the California sun, although we had some fog earlier in the day. But that's for the California folk, I'm sure that's pretty common to you. But overall, incredible weekend. I don't think we can say enough about the job that Tony Sampson, as well as the North American Toffees, the San Diego Toffees, did to set this up. So major shout out and credit to them. But yeah, I think to jump right into it, I think we have to start with Friday evening at the Harp. That was essentially the kickoff event and kind of welcome party for everybody that was coming in. And it was just a really great environment. Great to see Toffees from near and far come to the event.
Yeah, it was a really good turnout for a Friday night. I know a lot of people, traveling in for just the weekend. I don't think we had the full contingent that we did the following morning there for Friday night, but it was still really cool to see the pub that the San Diego Toffees regularly meet at, and it's a great pub right by the beach. Can't really beat the location. And Californians, I'll just say, it's my first time in your beautiful state, but you guys are so spoiled. Everyone's talking about how bad the weather is, and it's like slightly overcast and like 75 degrees. Meanwhile, I'm flying out of Maine where it's, trying to make up its mind if it wants to be the dead of winter, rainy and snowing one day, and then it'll be like 50 degrees maybe the next, and we're like, oh my God, it's so nice out. So the weather was fantastic, but yes, Friday night at the Harp was great. Got to see some faces who I hadn't seen in quite a while, and also got to hear from none other than Graham Stewart. Graham flew in, and they had someone representing from the club, also capturing the event, so you guys might have seen everything on social media. But yeah, just a really good get-together to kind of kick the weekend off. Obviously, everyone, I think, was a little, I will say, there were some expats, Scousers, that were over here, and they were the only ones who I think were not at all conservative in their approach to the night. They showed up. They brought the party, let's put it that way.
Yeah, there was, it's funny. I think when you get so many Evertonians in the same group together, of course, the good times will flow. Some the times were maybe a little bit better for, as you said, James. For us, especially James and I, walked over 20,000 steps on Friday, really trying to explore the city. And so we had a bit of an early evening. We still enjoyed our evening, don't get me wrong. We had a few beverages. Had some really good fun. But we also know, and I was really excited for James to experience, an early kickoff on Saturday.
Yeah, fortunately, it wasn't the true
4:30 a.m.
4:30 a.m. kickoff that some West Coast Toffees are dedicated enough to get up for. But we did have a 7 a.m., and we did have to get down to the Harp, which is like a 15, 20-minute Uber ride from our hotel. So we were up. Shan got up a little bit before me. He's more of a morning person than I am, to be fair. But yeah, we were there I think we got there just before kickoff. 6:58, we show up, the Harp's rocking. There's probably 110, 120 Toffees there already, and people were filing in as the game was just getting kicked off. You wake up and the lineup's out, and you're checking the lineup as you're in the Uber to the hotel. Big match for Everton, no question about it, sort of on this onslaught of April. It's been a tough schedule, and this was one that loomed large on the calendar. We talked about it on the last pod, kind of an interesting tactical matchup and how David Moyes would approach it, and I think he went with, a more, what we've seen from him, a conservative, but still making these kind of tiny tweaks to get a view and an assessment of the kind of squad he has. And really the only change on the day was, of course, Beto dropping for Broja, which I thought was maybe a good game for Broja to get involved, and I think it turned out to be. game where I expected it to be a lot more back and forth than it ended up being. But Shan, your thoughts on the lineup, and then maybe just getting into how the game started and that experience.
Yeah, sure. I think you said it well on Everton, and I think Moyes kind of said it in his pre-match presser. He just wanted to get a look at Broa. He's doing a good job of staying competitive in terms of trying to get points on the table, but at the same time evaluate the squad, right? Because there's so much mystery into kind of the future on some of those players. But in terms of Forest, right, and we were talking about it yesterday or Friday, James, in terms of Anthony Elanga, Chris Wood, and Taiwo Awanwi potentially being available. And, of course, I was so confident that Chris Wood would be available. He was. Elanga was on the bench, so I thought that was actually kind of our benefit, Jota Silva coming in for him. But other than that, pretty good lineup. Alex Moreno for Ola Aina, which I think ended up being a really big help for us. But it is interesting, right, because as we were talking about it, Forest have everything to play for, right, in terms of the Champions League qualification. It almost felt very Everton in 2020 of the sense of, the reverse of this is kind of everything to play for. Team that you're playing against, really, whether we lost, won, or drew, we'd be fine. And so it's just kind of interesting looking in the match and seeing what happened after that.
Yeah, and I should add, I missed, obviously, Mikalenko also returned to the lineup, which was great. Very welcome to me, as much as I think I wasn't a fan of Nathan Patterson last week. Jury's still out. I think there were a diverse span of opinions on his performance. Some people thought he did okay, well enough, given he was playing out of position, but I was very happy to see Mikalenko back. And Forest like to counter a lot. I was really interested early on to see how neither team really wants the ball, generally speaking, but someone was going to have majority possession, and I thought Forest being the home team, they might be the one to kind of assert themselves on the game. But as David Moyes in hindsight said in the post-match, it was impressive how much Everton were able to control the game from the very beginning and really limited Forest to very little, both possession and meaningful chances. Struggled a little bit, I think, to create on the other end, but still had by far the better chances, especially in the first half and as the game wore on. It felt frustrating because we would get in those positions, and still this is the same Everton team we've watched all season. They're going to struggle to finish those opportunities, but Forest just did not look like a team that's everyone thought a few weeks ago was a shoo-in for the Champions League, and now you talk about stuff to play for. The bottom of the table, kind of relegation's decided, but those bottom positions in the table tightening up points-wise. Top of the table also. Forest, they're not shoo-ins for Europe right now. It's getting very competitive. City are going to make a late push, Chelsea, etc. So I was very shocked. They just weren't that good. They just did not look that good. And we know that they've overperformed perhaps, and maybe this was coming back to earth, but your thoughts on the dynamics of the game, particularly the first half?
Yeah, fixture congestion is not an excuse for kind of Forest's performance, and even injuries, they had enough to definitely do better. I think this was just kind of a really complete performance from us, and it came at a really good time because I think versus Arsenal, we were just so putrid in so many phases of the game. And I was really impressed how, you look kind of across the pitch. I don't think any of our players necessarily had a bad game, and you had some players like Jack Harrison, I thought, had a really solid game, probably one of his best games this season. Mikalenko, as you said, James, I thought he did a really good job in regards to his defensive kind of contribution, especially on, you look at guys like Callum Hudson-Odoi and even Anthony Elanga as he came in, those guys just were not at it today in terms of, and I think of course you can maybe say they didn't have a great day, but I think that kind of give credit to our team in regards to the midfield. Even somebody like James Garner, right, just worked so hard, and so it was good to see. And even somebody like Broha, maybe not his best day, but I think in terms of continuity and being able to kind of create some plays on the pitch. So for us, and then also too the possession piece, right? To your point, I think you made it well in the sense of we looked somewhat comfortable, I would say, for a team that I don't think we're the best possessing team by any means, and we have some very lackadaisical players at the time, and of course our most lackadaisical player produced one of the greatest moments of the match, the greatest moment of the match, and we'll get to that later, but yeah, I was just so impressed. And then also, too, right, I expected Pickford to have to be kind of a bit of a hero if we were to escape with a win, let alone a draw, and he didn't really have to do much today.
No, he didn't. And I think with Forest, as we alluded to in the last episode, they don't tend to press very high, but they do attack, they do counter very effectively. And then that's generally speaking, that's their bread and butter. That's what's brought them so much success this season. I really thought that they would be able to exploit the fact that we had more of the ball, and they really just didn't. Even though they're not going to pressure us, we weren't creating very much, but they weren't able to transition very well. It kind of devolved for a long stretches of the game to me. It felt like both teams just kind of looking long. And the reason I thought it'd be a good match for Broja is because he's maybe a little bit more effective than Beto at running into the channels. We know he's not a hold-up player, and if you're going to rely on him to hold up in the same way that we do with Beto, that's not setting him up for success. But I thought that we'd be able to maybe play through the midfield a little bit more, look for those through balls to him, and maybe create something. But as we were talking about a little bit last night, Broja also tends to, I think, just naturally drift wide a little bit more and not necessarily stay as central. And I don't know that works quite as well. And we talk about Jack Harrison having such a good game. He did. And we went to him a lot more with that sort of long switch into space that he was able to track down. And I think he had a pretty favorable matchup defensively that he did well to exploit. Meanwhile, on the other side, Njai, who's the one that everyone's watching and expecting, I think benefited from Jack benefited from the fact that Njai draws so much attention, giving him that sort of space. And we know he's not the fastest, but he was doing well to beat guys and get crosses in. But then again, you're putting crosses into Broja, who's not all that well equipped to get on the end of them.
Yeah, and unfortunately for NJ, probably one of his tougher games for the club.
Yeah.
Not really, I think, his fault, because you saw when he got in the middle, he was able to kind of create some chances. But to your point, James, I think Nico Williams, as frustrating as he was yesterday, did a pretty good job on him. But what I really, to your point, they were not pressuring us at all in our half. And I think what we did well is we really limited the amount of turnovers we have. And from a tactical sense, I thought both Ghana and the other individual that got a yellow card, I'm trying to think. Oh, JB. I mean, what we talk about earning our yellows. JB definitely earned his yesterday,
Sure did, yeah.
and Ghana as well on Morgan Gibbs-White. Those were kind of really two chances. Of course, you do those moments, and so for us, like I felt we did a pretty good job there, and I was actually really impressed with our set pieces yesterday. Like
Yes.
Even though we didn't score, probably the best we've looked in set pieces in some time. I don't know if Charlie Adam was on vacation the last week or so, but yeah, it was good to see that, and I hope that's something we could see kind of going forward as the season wraps up, and just developing kind of that portfolio of getting some of those chances in, because I think on another day we score one of those. Forest defended really well in kind of those last moments. But I think also, too, you give so much credit to Moyes for managing the game well. I thought his subs were good. I just thought, it was kind of one of those days that if it did end 0-0, I think we'd probably be a bit upset.
Yes.
And I think going into this game, you'd probably take that, right, and be very happy with it. Yeah,
you talk about the infamous charts, back when when relegation was a realistic threat. We're thankfully so far past that now, but you look at this month and you're thinking we'll be lucky to get. I would have been happy with a point or two from the entire month, and we're already well above that mark. And it's just a testament to David Moyes and the job he's done, and the players and their response. But I think Forest got found out a little bit today, and in no small part due to the midfield players who you talked about already. We talk about him on the show till we're blue in the face, but Idrissa Gana Gueye, again, I think he was 9 for 11 in long balls, disrupted play so well, and as one of the few players in this team who's accustomed to controlling possession a little bit more, he stepped up to that role just incredibly well and owned that responsibility of facilitating and being careful with the ball and just not giving it away carelessly. And I think the other midfielder players really followed his lead. Even Doucoure, who we talked about, he has the moment. We'll get to that because experiencing it live with all the Toffees was phenomenal. But Doucoure didn't even really give the ball away all that much.
Yeah, no, I thought, and that was, I think, the key to the game, right, is even though we definitely were kind of the possessing team, I felt like the moments that, let's just say, Jack misses the shot, right? All these shots were either going out of bounds or whatnot. So, these kind of counters on the break, they were very limited. And in the moments they had them, we either tactically fouled well or we just defended well, right? And kind of, I know Jota Silva probably had the 2 shots on net, Timu Jack. But, yeah, but they were pretty pedestrian, and Jordan was in a good spot both times to save those. So, yeah, I just think it was kind of one of those games, and even just kind of looking at the post-match kind of comments of Forest fans and whatnot, many of them were truly just being like, man, they came to our place and, they just beat us at our game.
And that's a team that's performed extremely well at home, have gone long stretches unbeaten, and to show up like that just shows what Moyes has done and what this group of players looks night and day from really not that long ago. And now I think probably a good time to talk because, look, all that, we dominated the game. We deserved to win. But you get to stoppage time. The 5 minutes go up. We, of course, Moyes has made a couple subs. We haven't even mentioned Beto coming on yet. I thought he made a huge difference. Shout out to Jackson, who threatened us, I think, maybe bodily harm if we didn't talk about how good Beto had.
We need to, we talk about the summer. We need to kind of investigate Jackson's relationship with Beto.
Yeah, I think it's getting a little bit out of hand, if I'm being honest. But you know what? I appreciate his enthusiasm. I'm not going to rain on his parade because, again, he comes on and offers something so different from Broja and immediately just causes complete chaos.
Yeah, and both of those center backs are absolutely physical specimens. So yeah, it's just you can really like understand that like Milinkovic and Murillo, like those are really good center backs. And so Beto giving them a hard time, I think also too them getting used to Broja and then Beto bull in a china shop, right? He's going to cause some issues, but also too just kind of the most, it seemed like harmless sub at the time, but Dwight coming in, in the, I think it was almost like the 88th or 89th minute, right?
Yeah, right towards the end of regulation.
And so, to your point, James, going into stoppage time, of course, we're, the pub is kind of in everyone's excited still. I think the fact that, from Toffee Fest, we're not down, right? This is not a situation where we feel like, we've put a bad performance in it. In fact, quite the opposite. And then, of course, the magic moment, right, where, significant credit to Dwight here in regards to, Murillo is a very kind of sure-footed defender, picks his pocket, and then kind of goes down as Dwight does. Not the most acceleration, but then actually puts in quite a great ball. I know there's kind of been some commentary on the defender maybe doing a little bit better, sure, but the trajectory of the ball, I think it was in a great spot. And then Doucoure, man, I mean, you talk about a man of moments. This was just an excellent goal when you look at it live. And just the scenes after that, insane, not only at the field, but at the pub.
Yeah, it was incredible. And we talk about Doucoure. I'm watching the match live, and of all the players, I was just really hoping to see Charlie come on for Doucoure as a substitute. Charlie, of course, did come on, and I think he did quite well. Again, sort of contributing to that pressure and chaos higher up the pitch. But I did not. I just thought Doucoure was not doing what his deficiencies as an attacking player were on full display. I'll put it that way. Not the best, but as you say, he just has a knack for never quitting, running tirelessly to the final whistle, even if he's a little bit slower, not quite as fast as he once was. But his read, his run on this play, again, turn it over. There were just so few of these moments in the match of up and down, catching defenders on the back foot and really, really counterattacking effectively. But this one at the very last, almost at the very death, was the one that made the most difference. And it's Dwight McNeil. It's the left foot that, could Murillo maybe have made a play on that pass and not let it slip by him? Yes, but it's also really hard as a defender to reverse your momentum when you're already kind of backpedaling and get in front of that. So maybe he misplays it, but Dwight also does a good job. And it's also debatable if Dwight was even trying to pass it to Doucoure, if he's trying to slide it through to Ghana, who's making the run. But regardless, Doucoure is there to get on the loose ball and one touch it home with a great finish. And for his half dozenth time at least, he's shown up in just critical moments. He doesn't do anything super noteworthy for most of the game, but then finally comes in and wins it for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy moment. And I think, of course, I just remember Clevy picking me up and just
the celebrations were.
Clevy picking me up, the 6'6", of course, outside the pub, they were comparing him to Jake O'Brien.
Yes.
So, some of the banter, of course, you'd have to be here to experience. But, no, it was just insane scenes. So happy, too, that it kind of happened this weekend of Toffee Fest, just because, you don't get many of these last-minute goals. And if anything, as an Evertonian, right, we've been at the tail end of those, right? So to experience that live with Graham Stewart, with David France, just Tony, and just, of course, James, you, Liz, just the whole collective faithful, just was a real special moment. And I think also, too, the game wasn't over. We had to defend, but, full-time blows, and it's just, I think everyone's just so impressed with a 1-0 win at Nottingham Forest, third place in the league. And to your point, it's just, we play Arsenal, Liverpool, and Forest, and we have 4 points.
Yeah, and the drama of the victory, like I think everyone in reality would have been very content with a 0-0 draw away at Forest. Sure. It was well on course to look like a solid away point, just another draw in a long season of draws for Everton. But to win in that dramatic fashion on the day of the event, beating Forest for the second consecutive Toffee Fest, the reactions of all the fans, people who had traveled, myself traveled the entire way across the country, people traveling all over the place for this match, and you hope you just get a moment. Like, it just would have been a little bit anticlimactic to come all the way here to see a 0-0 draw. And instead we get one of the most dramatic and enjoyable wins of the entire season. So I guess Toffee Fest is just good luck.
Yeah, and I think also, too, like, of course, Toffee Fest, this is the second year in a row we've beaten Nottingham Forest. But at the same time, right, like, we might have something to play for in terms of the table because, you put us at 38 points. Good week for some of the bottom dwellers like ourselves, in the sense of, Wolves won, but then, you get the Spurs and United losses, right, which are great for us. And so also, too, you go into 3 games at Goodison, right, in terms of City, and then, of course, Chelsea this month. But I think the team has a confidence, right, that it's just like we know it's going to be an absolutely tough game, especially what they did to Palace. But I'm feeling pretty good about Everton right now, especially going into just how important those last three games at Goodison are going to be.
There's just a very appropriate approach by the manager being taken in all of these games, and it's not the monotonous, singular, undiverse tactics that we saw under Shan, where no matter who we played, we were going to concede possession for the most part, barring early round cup games where we're obviously going to have 60% or something like that. There's a thoughtfulness and there's a pragmatism, but also an ambition, I would say, to be competitive in every single game, but also not just go for the draw, to push towards the end, to go for the wins, and maybe to in defense of Shan slightly, but we're also getting healthy, and Moyes has these options coming off the bench that are attacking options that you can get a bit of a different look and change the game late on. And he's taking those opportunities to give these guys the time, and yeah, he leaves the subs late on this one, but it still makes the difference. So he's vindicated in that approach.
Yeah, and I think I loved his post-match comments of just, truly kind of doubling down and being like, we were the better team from the beginning. He was, I think, very assured and confident in the team. Even, Ghana's having fun on the bus, combines are gobshites. So you got to love that. And they're just playing Uno randomly. You got to love it.
Uno's a great game.
No, Uno's a great game. I totally agree with you, James. But in all seriousness, I think he is, I don't know if we've given enough credit to Moyes. I know there's been skepticism when he first came on, but the run of form we've been on has been great, even with the draws. And so for us, and I think he's doing a good job of getting guys playing time, right? You have to. It's a very fine balance. I'm not jealous of his position as a manager to kind of make all these people in the dressing room happy, especially when you have permanent and loans, right? But I think he did a good job of managing the game today. And I'm excited, in terms of kind of, seeing some of the other lineups he's probably going to put out the rest of the season, because he's shown that he's going to make small tweaks, but you can kind of see what that we're going to have some fun in regards to some of the things that he does.
Yeah, it's nice to not see the same exact players, have some sort of slight change, one or two guys, and I think that's the way to go about it. Obviously, wholesale changes, we don't have the depth to do that first and foremost, but second of all, you don't want to disrupt a team that's on such a tremendous run of form since he's come in. So I've had to eat my words to an extent on David Moyes. I thought he would be a fine appointment. I did not think things would go this incredibly well, and credit to the Friedkin group. Allegedly, he was the first choice, and he's proven them correct that this was the right choice. I don't think we expected to be this comfortable in the final games of the season, and here we are. We're really enjoying it, and it will be competitive because, Wolves are making a run. We're still in the thick of the excitement of potentially finishing above Spurs and United, which would just be so incredibly perfect and a beautiful achievement, even though it's not where I think any Everton fan wants Everton to be. It just shows, even though everything that's gone against Everton in recent years, those other clubs, even though they have such an advantage, decades of financial advantage, that if you're run reasonably well, and even in short term, like we bring David Moyes in, even though this squad is still so lightly invested into, you can still overachieve. And now with the Friedkin group and all that stuff, and maybe we talk about that a little bit in a minute with this event and what it means for, I think, American fans and whatnot. But punching above our weight, I think there's that sort of underdog mentality that Everton fans embrace to begin with. And it'll be a fun final few games of the season to see if we can really kind of assert ourselves in this upper tier of the bottom half of the table.
I just love how, to your point, they're playing with belief, but I just feel like the pressure is taken off of them, right? So they can play with freedom. They're whether they lose, whether they win. I know that they're going to continue to put the effort they've put in, the last few years, right? Especially these guys that have really kind of kept us afloat. But I'm just really excited for, the Doucoures of the world, the Ghanas of the world, right? That, like, I understand we ask a lot of them, but I could see kind of them much more jovial, right? And just because the weight of the world is not on their shoulders.
For the first time in a really long time, it's really hard to kind of overstate. That's so important.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, like, we're playing a much more positive brand of football, and so I think it's you just see that people are having more fun out there, right? And even defending, like, I mean, they're doing such a great job. JB, Tark, can't say enough about them, but even Jake, continuing to do a great job at right back. Guys that are a bit out of position, but no one's complaining. Jake has never said a bad word. And so, it's just been great. And, of course, just seeing NJ healthy again has kind of given us a little bit of a boost. And so hopefully, we continue to get the best out of him because when he's rocking and rolling, right, it's just there's nothing that's going to stop us.
Yeah, this back unit that's been pretty consistent, bar 1 or 2 games, really gives us the platform. And then the midfield today, again, we talked about it a little bit. Garner stepping up. He got dropped. He responded really well to that, came in. He doesn't have to play beyond himself. He can play within himself, composed. Helps when you're not under a lot of pressure and you're kind of facing forward and you can dictate the game a little bit more versus having to react to players always trying to bring you down. But those two with Doucoure in front of them, I still hope to see Charlie a little bit more. And there's a lot of debate about, why isn't Charlie starting? We know the appearances will trigger the obligation. Moyes has been very coy about whether we'll keep him or not. I think that's kind of just gamesmanship on his part of you don't want to show your hand too early, and I'd be shocked if that deal's not made permanent. It just seems like such a no-brainer. But great to see Charlie getting minutes in opportunity to come on, again, late, cause chaos, all that sort of stuff. Harrison on the right, even still having a great game. And Njai, even when he's not having his best game, he draws so much attention that it makes things easier across the front line for everybody else. So, and Beto, again, coming on as a sub. So all the stuff that we've kind of talked about. Any final thoughts on the game, Shan, before we maybe talk a little bit about the experience of Toffee Fest and all the great events that took place after the match, because it was a full day.
Just an incredible moment from Doucoure. Give him all the credit, right, for showing up in just such a massive moment and making Toffee Fest that much more special. You can't put a price on those moments, right? Like, it's just it's great, and to do it with so many Evertonians near and far. And then just, I think also too, it's just a great result for us. Like, it's just, for us, it continues kind of, moving us forward, and it makes you try to almost like see if it's potentially we can catch, Palace or Brentford, right? It might be a bit of a long shot, but at least it gives you a little bit of hope. And in a league that kind of has lost a bit of drama in regards to the top of the table, there's plenty of it in the middle. So
definitely is. So forgive us for bit of a more casual post-match. Hopefully you'll still enjoy it, and if you do, let us know. We do appreciate it. After Toffee Fest, after the match, rather, I should say, we had a Q&A with Graham Stewart, who came over and spoke very well about his time at the club, both as a player and then sort of as an ambassador. We won't regale you with all of the details because I can't recall it all, but it was a really good talk, and you can tell how impressed he was with the amount of people who were dedicated enough to come to California, travel to this pub, watch this game at 7 o'clock a.m. He talked about that, just being kind of blown away by the dedication. And I think one of the more telling comments was him talking about how he would go back to the club and really try to relay the level of dedication and support that there is for Everton in the States.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, James. He spoke really well about the club, and I think he's been kind of one of the great ambassadors for the club, amidst a lot of the tough times, right? Because And so and then of course I think it was nice to see, him talk about managers and someone like Moyes, and how much he gets the club, and kind of hearing that, I think from someone as kind of revered as he is, meant a lot. And I think some of the fun stories, of course, it was great to be here at Toffee Fest to experience those. So just kind of another reason, right, why these events are so cool, because they do a great job of making these stories fun and very relatable. I'm not a historian by any means in regards to, but when it comes to them speaking, it's just fun because they do a really good job of speaking about the timelines. You have a much better appreciation of Everton and why you're an Evertonian after you kind of hear somebody like Graham speak. And so we did the Q&A, some great raffles that kind of went on, some really fun prizes, a lot of autographed kits, some really good pieces from Laura Gates, and then of course some just kind of Landon Donovan autographed jersey. Americans did play for Everton, believe it or not.
That's right. We did have them.
That was really fun. And so, and of course, multiple people were drinking Guinnesses at 7, 8 in the morning. And so after that, or do you have any final words, James, about the event?
Well, I was just going to say, I guess, it's always interesting when a player like Graham, who, of course, saved the club from relegation in the 90s and then also lifted the FA Cup kind of the last time that Everton won anything. And he comes and speaks to fans of all ages. I mean, there were people of all ages, and I mean all ages. We had little tiny kids. We had people who had probably been, people who had seen these teams play, but I'd say the majority probably weren't necessarily fans in those days, just because if you're American, it was impossible to have that kind of exposure to it. And just to get an appreciation, hopefully most Everton fans understand the history because it's such an important part of what makes Everton Everton. But to hear about those experiences live, to hear him talk about those players, and then hear about carrying that forward and how optimistic they are about the new stadium, about the new owners, how they feel that everyone is united in wanting Everton to get back to that same level, competing for trophies, winning things, and him recognize that even though it has been 30 years of middling success, middle of the table, best of the rest, fighting relegation, kind of all those things in between, despite all that, you still have this unbelievable group of loyal supporters, and this is like the worst time to be an Everton fan in Everton's history. So to think of what the potential could be if Everton start being competitive again, or even just invested in providing resources to these groups that do so much great work, like the North American Toffees, it's really exciting to think about what this fan base could grow into and what you could have access to by providing more resources. So credit to Graham. I think he had a great time, and as you said, Sean, did the Q&A, and then we went to the park / the beach.
Yes.
And what was advertised as a kickabout turned into 5 or 6 or 7-a-side game, depending on what minute we were playing. Graham graciously joined in with us, which was kind of surreal. Does Graham Stewart still have it, Sean, would you say?
He absolutely does. You could tell class is permanent, right? Form is temporary, and with Graham, it was great. No one got hurt. No one kicked the ground. So that was fun. We didn't have any long-term injuries that came out about it, no small problems. But, yeah, it was a fun picnic, kind of fun. And, of course, for us, just, that nice San Diego breeze. So, if it was kind of any other climate, probably would be a little bit tougher. But, yeah, it was really fun. Definitely loved doing it. And, yeah, after that, took some time to kind of get back to the hotel. And then we had a fun kind of, mini tailgate with the San Diego Wave.
Yeah, San Diego